We think there should be a mature conversation about having nuclear in the system, which is zero emissions.
A big F for fail when it comes to climate policy.
The climate wars are back, and nuclear energy is one of the battlegrounds it'll be fought on.
I don't want to commit subsidies that aren't necessary. It's to make sure that it's commercially viable, and we think it can be.
But does the private sector think nuclear is commercially viable? Kyle Mangini, who manages more than $100 billion worth of energy and infrastructure investments, doesn't think so.
The nature of these facilities is that it's extremely difficult to get someone to build it for you on a date certain fixed price basis. And so there's an enormous amount of risk left with the owners, and the private sector simply can't manage that risk.
But fund manager Philip Hudak believes nuclear is so important that taxpayers should foot the bill.
Subsidies are an important element to get the shift going. We're seeing that in wind and solar, and there is no exception that nuclear would be part of that.
Australia's independent scientific body, the CSIRO, estimates electricity generated from small modular reactors will cost as much as $641 per megawatt hour, up to $252 for large-scale nuclear, while solar, wind, hydro and battery storage is the cheapest option, costing up to $140 per megawatt hour.
Nuclear is the most expensive option for Australia. The technology in the Australian context is entirely unproven, and we don't have any of the supply chains, any of the labour, skilled workforce or knowledge to actually do it.
Small modular reactors could be constructed between about 3 to 5 years, large reactors 6 to 12 years.
But that timeframe could be a little bit optimistic. On average, it's taken 7 years for China to build its nuclear reactors, which is about 2 years more than Beijing had hoped for. At the other extreme, Americans were hoping it would take around 7.5 years, but in reality, that timeframe has doubled to 14 years. The UK is also experiencing that problem, with the construction of its Hinkley C power plant running late and way over budget. It was supposed to cost $35 billion over 9 years, but that's now expected to blow out to as much as $88 billion and take about 15 years. That's why some of Australia's major energy companies aren't willing to invest in the nuclear option.
It's kind of like looking for unicorns in the garden. It wouldn't be a great use of our time.
AGL's boss, Damien Nix, says there is no viable schedule for the regulation or development of nuclear energy in Australia, and the cost, build time and public opinion are all prohibitive. Cbus Super, which manages over $85 billion worth of retirement savings for Australian workers, is not on board either.
We don't see nuclear as really a part of the energy sort of transition going forward.
Mining billionaire and green hydrogen investor Andrew Forrest is not on board either.
If we swallow this new lie that we should stop the rollout of green energy and that nuclear energy will be our fairy godmother, we will be worse off again.
On top of that, nuclear development has been banned under Australian law since the late 1990s.
It's extremely difficult to see what could be changed to make it investable. The legal challenges alone would go on for years.
Investors demand certainty, and with a very uncertain future for a nuclear rollout, it's possible that taxpayers could be the ones picking up the tab if the coalition wins office.